Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a premier field engineer specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion is part 13 of a series focusing on software updating. Today's focus, the ability to manage third-party updates, the integration to manage third-party updates that was introduced in ConfigMgr Current Branch 1806. Here's the agenda. What are third-party updates, and we as ConfigMgr admins, why do we care? Then we just want to look at third-party update management that's going through some requirements, looking back a bit and kind of seeing how the third-party update story has evolved through the years. Talk about integrating third-party updates, configuring that, the fun part of watching it in action. Talk about an advanced scenario as well. And then we'll wrap up with some troubleshooting tips and tricks. So this I will say too, this session is focused on that third-party update integration. However, you will hear me talk about through this several times System Center Updates Publisher. In fact, the session right before this one, part 12, is focused on System Center Updates Publisher. The two kind of go hand in hand, right? So we'll talk about some ways that is true as we go along. So what are third-party updates? Well, put simply, third-party updates fall into two big broad categories. One would be third-party software updates prepared by partners, right? These would be catalogs that are created, maintained, published by these third-party vendor partners. Folks like HP, Dell, Adobe, right? And I'm going to put an asterisk around Dell and Adobe. You'll understand that as we progress through. And there's more than those three. Really, the list of all of our third-party update partners, if you look in System Center Updates Publisher and all of the catalogs that are available there, those are our third-party update publishers. And as we go along, you'll understand that these individual organizations are in different places in terms of getting their catalog natively ready for the third-party update integration piece. But that's looking forward a bit, so I'll stay here. The second big broad category would be updates that are prepared for custom line of business applications. So you might have some internally developed applications that also need to be updated, and the developers of those applications could build the updates using different tools, System Center Updates Publisher in this case, and make those available through that third-party update integration, right? IT could do the same thing. Those are the big two buckets we're talking about when we refer to third-party updates. So why do we, as ConfigMgr admins, care, right? Or why do we, as a business leader, care? Well, put simply, organizations all over the world have spent considerable time and effort to develop a cadence where every month they are evaluating updates, pushing updates out, and have built business process around that, agreement with business groups, and so on. Those are Microsoft updates, right? So everything really that shows up in your update catalog, whether it's an Office update, a Windows update, a whatever, right? Those are updates that we provide. And we have a lot of business process around that. Customers do around the world. So why not take that business process and just simply allow third-party updates to fall within what's already been established? It brings extra value to your organization because you can now apply updates outside of just the Microsoft products. It allows you to leverage your existing ConfigMgr infrastructure to deploy these updates and leverage the familiar process that you've negotiated with your business units to allow updating of the Microsoft stuff already. And now the third-party update stuff just falls right in line. Okay, so what are the requirements of third-party updates? So these are just three that I put out there, three big categories. First, you need an available update catalog. Again, that catalog could be vendor provided, could be one that is created custom by your developers or by IT. Right? One thing about the catalog, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go along near the end. You'll see this as we get into some of the demos, right? So with the introduction of third-party update integration into ConfigMgr, and also with the introduction of System Center Updates Publisher 2018, right? there is the concept of two catalog versions, if you will. I haven't seen official names for these. I call them an updated catalog schema, catalog version, whatever, and a legacy catalog version. So you need a catalog, and it will be either in one of those two formats. So a little note here, and you'll see this as we go along. The catalogs that are provided in the updated, the current catalog format, fit nicely into third-party update integration, right? And they will show up by default in the console, right? There's one there today that fits that updated, that current catalog model. Then there's the legacy catalogs. So legacy catalogs can be used, right, with a bit of an asterisk around that. Just be careful. There's a little bit of extra stuff that goes along with it, as you'll see. They're not blocked, right? You can import them. Very strongly encourage that if there's a catalog out there that's in the legacy format that you really want to use with the third-party update integration, that you give that feedback to the catalog vendor, right? There's a little bit of extra tweak you have to do with these legacy catalogs, which you'll see. So just to throw that out, we'll discuss this more as we go along. Another requirement, again, asterisk around here, is WSUS and SSL. So as we think as ConfigMgr admins and we hear the term WSUS, we also think hey, that's the software update point. And that's true, right? You're going to hear me refer, probably I'll mess it up, but I'm going to try to refer to WSUS with the specifics that are required by WSUS itself, and then I'll refer to the SUP software update point, or call it WSUS and SUP, whatever it is, as we go through. But as I say WSUS, understand that's also the SUP server, but there are certain requirements that WSUS has in this scenario that ConfigMgr has to adhere to, right? And this is one. So WSUS and SSL. So your WSUS server, SUP, must be configured to support SSL if that WSUS server, SUP, is remote from the site server, right? That's also true if you're using SCUP to publish these updates. If SCUP is remote from the WSUS server, SUP, right, then SSL is required. This is not a ConfigMgr thing. This is not a System Center Updates Publisher thing. This is purely a WSUS requirement, right? And again, I mentioned SCUP in there, not to confuse this. We're focused on third-party update management. Again, SCUP was the session before this. I mention it only because these two concepts kind of fit hand in hand really nicely where you want them to, so I throw that out. Now, the other part about this WSUS and SSL, you might be concerned, well, if I am going to have a remote WSUS server, SUP, and I need to put it in SSL configuration, what about my clients? Well, the answer there is your clients are not required at all to access your WSUS SUP server via SSL at all. That's just a ConfigMgr 2 WSUS SUP requirement. Again, that is not ConfigMgr, that is a WSUS API requirement. And then finally, a big requirement of all of this is that we need to have a signing certificate. So don't let the word certificate make you nervous, right? There are interesting, complex scenarios with certificates. This is probably the simplest scenario there could be with certificates, not only because it's really simple, this scenario with certificates, but because, as you'll see, ConfigMgr third-party update integration makes it even easier in certain configurations to work with certificates. More on that in a minute, right? So what is this signing certificate? What is it used for? What is the role for this signing certificate? So let's move out to a 30,000-foot view. So every single update that you deploy in your environment, whether it be through ConfigMgr, through WSUS, it really makes no difference at all. Another tool, right? Every single update must be digitally signed. That has been that way forever, right? This is not something that ConfigMgr admins or update admins really pay attention to that much, because in a Windows environment where Microsoft provided updates are being applied to those Windows machines or Windows software, those Windows systems already trust the certificate that was used to sign the update, right? So Microsoft signs the update digitally, and then the certificate used to sign that update is already trusted by Windows systems. So you don't really have to do anything. That digital signature, though, is absolutely required. Now think about third-party updates, right? Those third-party updates are provided by the third party, and just like Microsoft updates, they have to be digitally signed in order to be acceptable to a Windows system. The challenge here is that you need to know the certificate that was used to sign them. That's where the signing certificate comes to play, right? When you have updates and it's specific to the content associated with those updates, right? More on that later. We use the signing certificate that is generated, right, to sign the content. And then that signing certificate is also known, I'll show you the process, to every client out there that wants to accept those third-party updates. And so because of that, the trust chain is satisfied, and those pieces of content that are now signed by the signing certificate are accepted on the client, right? So a lot of words to illustrate what or to describe what I'm going to illustrate to you here in a minute. Suffice it to say that that signing certificate, there's really only one, right? Needs to really only be one. That signing certificate can either be self-signed, which is an easier scenario for sure, because it allows ConfigMgr to do a lot of the work for you. It could also be produced by a certificate authority, right? That certificate authority could either be a commercial certificate authority or one that is on-prem. And again, this signing certificate is specifically required by WSUS, right? In the process of setting up third-party update integration, ConfigMgr will either load that signing certificate onto WSUS itself, which is where that SSL stuff comes in if WSUS stuff is remote, or you will do it, right? Again, both scenarios. All right, so let's move on. So if you're using the self-signed, it allows ConfigMgr to do a lot of the work for you. I'm going to show you both ways, just in case, but FYI. And hopefully that made sense, but if it doesn't, I'll explain it to you a little bit more when I demo it. All right. So a look back, third-party update management did not start with integration of third-party update management into ConfigMgr. We've been able to help you with third-party update management for quite some time. There's a standalone tool that is still available today called System Center Updates Publisher. Have 3 versions of it that have released. So what is System Center Updates Publisher? Well, if you go look on the web for definition of System Center Updates Publisher, you'll probably find several articles, but one definition that's out there for sure is simply that System Center Updates Publisher is a standalone tool that enables independent software vendors, OEMs, or IT admins to import, manage, and develop software update definitions which can be deployed with ConfigMgr, right? So again, we're focused on third-party update management, but this tool, SCUP, System Center Updates Publisher, still, understanding what it is, kind of where it came from, and knowing that it can partner very nicely in a third-party update environment, it's relevant to at least mention here. And again, the session specifically on SCUP is part 12 of this series, right? So the initial release, well, even before we get that, right? So what does SCUP do, right? So SCUP allows you to import updates from external catalogs, non-Microsoft. It allows you to modify update definitions, including applicability and deployment metadata. You can export updates to external catalogs, and then finally you can publish updates to an update server, all with SCUP. So SCUP has 3 releases. The initial release was SCUP 4.5. It was released December 15th of 2008, and was our first foray into this, right? SCUP 2011 released in May 16th of 2016. It came with a bit of an updated UI to fit the newer format, added support for various operating systems, and worked in a Config Manager 2007 through 2012 R2 environment. And then we have SCUP 2018, which asterisk here. There is no product called SCUP 2018. That's my designation because it was released in 2018. If you launch SCUP 2018, it will not refer to 2018. It's just System Center Updates Publisher, right, when it loads up. But the 2018 version of SCUP was released March 21st, 2018, added support for Windows 10 and Server 2016, also added support for ConfigMgr Current Branch, ConfigMgr LTSB, still supports ConfigMgr 2012 R2, and I think even ConfigMgr 2012 by itself. And this is where we introduced a new catalog format. Whenever you're producing a catalog from SCUP, it will be in that new catalog format, right? Okay. So still thinking about SCUP, right? Still looking back. Again, what processes does SCUP help you with? I already mentioned them. We'll mention them again. And then what components make up SCUP, or does SCUP need in order to work? So first, the processes. So with SCUP, you can obtain and import third-party updates. You can author custom updates. You can then manage and publish those updates. In order for SCUP to work, there are certain requirements. You do need a certificate. Again, this is your signing cert. It can either be self-signed, which is easiest. I keep saying that because I want you to hear that, right? Or it can be certificate authority generated, either on-prem certificate authority or commercial certificate authority. This certificate will live with WSUS, right? And that certificate will also be needed on the client in order to complete the trust chain whenever you deploy these updates out, right? There's also the concept of an update catalog. We've said this again several times. Two formats, either the legacy or the updated format. The catalog can be either custom created or vendor supplied, up to you. And then the individual updates within the catalog, right? So whenever we talk about updates, throw a couple of terms at you that may seem new, but they are not new, right? There's the concept of an individual update can either be published as metadata only or metadata plus content. That may seem new, but if you think about it, this is how we've worked forever, right? Whenever you synchronize every month software updates for Microsoft, you're getting that update to show up in Config Manager's all update list, and then you decide from there which ones of those you want to deploy. The update, as it's initially synchronized, does not have any content. It just contains the metadata that describes the update, has the applicability rules, tells you whether that update's needed across your enterprise, right? If you decide to deploy it, you need to go get the content associated with it and then deploy the content out. That is exactly the same concept. The monthly synchronization that you do of Microsoft updates, when it comes into your console, before you ever get content and deploy it, those updates are metadata only, contains enough detail that systems can evaluate and decide whether they need it and report back, right? When you decide to deploy, then you are changing that to metadata plus content, right? And then it's deployable, and that is exactly the same. Here we put the terms out there so that you can understand them, and it's pretty obvious. Otherwise, you may never have thought about it, even though you do it every time, right? There's also a group policy setting specifically that needs to be out there, which I'll show you as we go along, right? Okay. So what about integrated, right? We have the same processes we need to consider. In the integrated scenario in Config Manager, we absolutely are able to obtain and import third-party updates, no problem. We're also able to manage and publish those updates, no problem. We are not able to author custom updates. So if you need to author custom updates, then that is something you need to do with System Center Updates Publisher, right? So again, there is still a role for System Center Updates Publisher, even in this integrated environment. In terms of components, all of the components we've talked about are still components that are needed in this integrated scenario. Certificates, update catalogs, all things we've talked about. Individual updates. Let me pause here, right? Because you see the asterisks here, right? So let me be very specific, and then I'll try to drill down on this when we get into the demo. With third-party update integration, it is totally possible to pick and choose which updates from that third-party catalog that you want to deploy. It is not possible to selectively import certain updates from the catalog. To say it a different way, whenever you have a catalog of updates and you bring that into the ConfigMgr environment, the ConfigMgr environment is absorbing, or I guess I should say WSUS in this case first, is absorbing every single update from the selected catalog, right? Now, within a catalog, there might be different types of updates in that catalog, and certainly there you can pick and choose which ones you want to deal with, right? But and synchronize to ConfigMgr. But regardless of the settings for which products within a category you want to pull in, when you load that third-party catalog, when you subscribe to it, every single update in that catalog will be recorded and stored in WSUS, right? Again, this is no different, really, than what we do synchronizing our monthly updates from Microsoft anyway. This is not content, this is metadata only. So if the catalog that you're importing, you're subscribing to, has 4,000 updates in it, which the HP catalog does, plus more than that actually, then you are loading the metadata for every single one of those updates into your WSUS server, right? Now you may not even think that it would not even a big deal to you, because again, you're kind of accustomed to looking at the monthly update list that's available and sifting through and picking what you want, and that's great, right? But we live in a world where WSUS can get big, and we do have to maintain our WSUS database size and so forth. So if that's a concern to you, right, you do have the ability to only publish certain updates from a catalog into WSUS. But if you're going to do that, you have to use System Center Updates Publisher. Say it again, right? In the ConfigMgr integrated scenario, you import the catalog into WSUS and you take every single update in it. In the case of the HP catalog, 4,000 plus updates. If you would rather look through the updates in a vendor-supplied catalog and pick and choose which ones you want to actually publish from that catalog into WSUS, so maybe instead of 4,000 plus updates, you look through and you decide, oh, I only need these 400, right? Well, that's fine. Just choose those 400, and then we will publish those 400 to WSUS, and you will not have to load the full catalog, right? Again, SCUP still has a place, can, if you want to do that, and the choice is yours, right? I just call it out so you understand the difference here. Okay, so there's, again, group policy settings, like always. The only component we add on top of what we have for SCUP is this thing called the ISV sync agent. So this ISV sync agent will run on every software update, or sorry, I should say, this ISV sync agent will be present on every software update point in the hierarchy. It will only be active and functional on the top level software update point, right? On all of the other ones, it will be there, but it will be inactive. And so I'll show you that as we go along here, right? Okay. So let's get to the fun part. We're going to dig into this and first configure. Third-party update integration in ConfigMgr will do three things. First, I want to show you how to configure your WSUS server SUP to support SSL, right? Again, I don't have to do this because my console and my software update point are on the same system. I'm just going to show you how it's done in case you need to do that. Then we'll configure the ConfigMgr site and then configure the ConfigMgr client. So as we're entering into the demo, I do want to call out, again, fully supported to have System Center Updates Publisher loaded and working in the same environment where third-party updates is installed and working. In fact, in this environment that I used to do part 12 of this, focused on SCUP is still here, and SCUP is still working, and I can leverage it all day, and the two are engineered to work together. Why? Because it enables you to pick and choose which piece works best where, right? Anyway, okay. So that said, let me pull in the lab, and we'll take a look at this, starting with WSUS and SSL. So I actually already have it configured here, but I want to walk you through it. So the first step in this, which I will not show because there's so much documentation out there on how to do it, right, is you do need a certificate that will support server authentication. So this is to support the SSL binding. That's just something we need to put into IIS. So however you do it from an internal on-prem CA, commercial CA, whatever, we do need that cert. Once we have the cert, then we need to go into IIS and add it so that IIS knows to use that for specifically WSUS. So let me open that up, and if we look under Sites here and WSUS admin, what we would do is edit bindings, and 8531 is the port for SSL, so I can edit that. And all this is here. The only thing I need to do is select the cert. So this is my list of certs. You can get it probably to show up in a friendly name here. I just have the numerical representation. But how do I know this is the one I need? Because I can view the cert, look in the Details tab, and scroll down a little bit. Well, first of all, I see it was issued by my certificate authority, which is an on-prem in my lab certificate authority. Then I also see the template that was used is for server authentication, and also the enhanced key usage tells me this cert is for certificate or for server authentication. So I know this is the right one. So I select it, and now the website is set to with the SSL cert, right? Now, note, that does not mean that the SSL stuff is necessarily turned on. It's just configured so that it can be, right? Then there are a number of sites underneath where we need to make one small configuration change. So starting with API remoting, there's the SSL settings. We'll just go in and click Require SSL. We'll do the same for Client Web Service, for DSS Auth Web Service, for the Service Sync Web Service, and for the Simple Auth Web Service. So once we have all that done, we'll go forward and tell IIS to essentially turn on using SSL. So I'm going to run my command prompt as an elevated command prompt, and then I'm going to navigate to the folder where the WSUS util tool is. So program files, update services, and tools, and then WSUS util, and configure SSL, and then give the FQDN here, and it will go through and turn on, mine was already turned on, but turn on the SSL binding to that website. And with that, I'm done. Now I need to go in and configure my software update point to use the SSL. So let me go into the Configuration Manager console. And pretty simple, just go to the administration node and go to Site Configuration, your server that hosts your software update point, and a simple checkbox, Require SSL. Now, once I've done that, it will reconfigure Config Manager to use SSL, and I can go validate in a couple of places that, in fact, that configuration is set and is working correctly. So the first place, and this is purely from a WSUS perspective, I can go to Registry Editor. All right, and I'm actually on the node already, Local Machine Software Microsoft Update Services Server Setup. And there's two things I'm looking for here. First is using SSL. That is set to 1, so that means WSUS is configured to use SSL. Also, port number is set to 8531 here, which tells me WSUS is set to use SSL. The other place I can go is the log, the WCM log, right? So I can just let that load up. And just a minute ago is where I did this configuration change initially. And so if I look here, I'm successfully connecting to WSUS. So that tells me that I am requiring SSL, and I'm still successfully connecting to it, all through here. So that's good, right? So it tells me I'm good to go with this configuration. All right, so we can close this back down and move on. So the next thing that we need to do is enable ConfigMgr to support third-party update integration. To do that, we will be in the Administration tab and go into Site Configuration and Sites. And under the Software Update point node, we're going to go through, and there's a third-party updates tab. So this tab was first introduced in 1802. It doesn't have the functionality there that it does here. So I'm going to click on this tab, and first I'm going to enable third-party update integration, right? The next thing, once I do that, I need a signing cert for use in WSUS and for placement on the clients. And so here I decide, first, by default, I'm going to manually configure the cert. Right, that would be if my certificate is provided by a certificate authority, either on-prem or third party, right? Or I can choose to let Configuration Manager manage the cert. This means that it's going to be a self-signed certificate, and we'll go out and make sure that certificate is in place. Now, before I hit apply here, notice that the list of certificates here below is blank, right? Because we've not configured anything yet. And I mentioned that this same system has System Center Updates Publisher on it. So in order for System Center Updates Publisher to publish updates, it also has to have the WSUS signing certificate. So in fact, in this case, there already is a WSUS signing certificate in place. So, and this kind of helps illustrate the compatibility between the two, because when I hit apply here, we're going to go out and look and either publish a brand new WSUS signing certificate, self-signed in this case, or we're going to discover one is there and we're going to add it. So I'm going to hit apply. Okay, so first of all, before we go look in the logs, hit OK. Before we go look in the logs, I can tell that the WSUS signing certificate is present by looking under certificates, right? So, well, either way, I'll look now. It doesn't really matter the order, but here's the WSUS self-sign cert, right? If I look at the log, the ConfigMgr log, it will record detail about the signing cert and checking the signing cert and so on, right? Now, this might take a second to kick in, so I'll wait on it here for a minute, but let me pause the video while I do, and I'll show you the entries in this log that are good for tracking the WSUS signing cert. Actually, let me not wait on it. I know that we already have it, so instead of just pausing too long, I'll go find the entry certificate. I can. Let's see. Maybe it rolled out. Let me go back to the old entry is. Let me go back into the WSUS log. I know it's here. Sorry, so program files and config manager and logs. Let's go to the older log and see if I can find it. So WCMGR here. Load that up and look for the WSUS signing certificate entries. That will prove to us that we've moved it around, and then I'll go back and show you that we have already discovered it and populated it. All right, so let's see if we can look for it again. WSUS, let's try certificate in this case. Checking WSUS for third-party signing certificate. This is what you'd expect to see. Getting signing certificate, here's the thumbprint, et cetera, et cetera. So this is essentially validating that we have the thumbprint that we need or the cert that we need. And I'll show you back here, we do have it because you saw me hit apply. And so if I go back into the software update point and look at third-party updates, you see, in fact, that we did find the signing cert. It is a month old at this point, so this is clearly the one that I put in previously, right? So we did find that everything is linked together, and we are good to go at this place, right? And I showed you where you can confirm under security certificates here that you can see that as well. So the other thing, just to show you, right? So that process, using the self-signed cert is a requirement, but in that case, in the case of using a self-signed cert, ConfigMgr will create and publish the WSUS signing cert to the WSUS certificate store. Now, once that cert is in the WSUS cert store, you actually have to put it in two other places, the Trusted Publisher store and the Trusted Root Certificate Authority store. If you do not have the self-signed stuff turned on and you're using the Certificate Authority generated stuff, you have to do it manually. It's not difficult to do manually, but if you're using the self-signed cert, ConfigMgr does it for you. So let me show you what I mean. So whenever I enabled third-party update integration and enabled ConfigMgr to manage the cert, we went out and looked for this store. In this case, it was already here. In your case, it may not be. Either way, we'll create it if we need to. And then we also look to see, do we have a certificate here? And we do. So we reuse the one that we have. Otherwise, we would have created one. Having the cert here is not enough, right? You also have to have that cert under Trusted Publishers. And you notice we do, right? Now, in this case, it's because I was using this same environment for System Cert Updates Publisher, and I had to manually export from this store and manually import to this store, right? And then I had to do the same to get the cert under Trusted Root Certificate Authorities here. But if you're using ConfigMgr and self-signed certs, we do all that work for you, right? So those are the three stores on the WSUS side where those certs need to be located. Now, that's configuring server integration for WSUS. You also then have to enable clients to use third-party or to allow third-party update integration. So if I go into default client settings and go down to software updates, all the way to the bottom, I have enable third-party software updates. Yes, right? So that is turned on my client. And so because that's turned on my client, I can go through and have ConfigMgr provision everything that is required on the client as well. So what is required on the client? Well, let's pull in a client and take a look. So here is just a Windows 10 machine. Oh, let me pull it onto the right screen. Here's just a Windows 10 machine. And if I log into it and go into the certificate store, the certificate store here should also be showing me policy, which it is. Let me go up under certificates. So on the client, you notice I don't have a WSUS store. Makes sense. This is not a WSUS server. I do have Trusted Publishers, and the WSUS Publishers self-signed cert is here. It is also under Trusted Root Certificate Authority right here. Right? It needs to be in both of those stores on the client. In addition to that, there is a GPO setting that needs to be turned on. So if I go to the bottom and I look at Windows Updates, this entry needs to be enabled, right? Allow signed updates from an intermediate or from an intranet Microsoft Update Service location. Enabled. The beauty is ConfigMgr does all that for you, right, and turns those things on. But these are good places to go validate to check that things are in order. So you can check there on the clients, but another place you can actually go look is WMI. So I launched WMI Explorer here and went ahead and navigated in. So if you go down to CCM, policy, machine, actual config, and find the CCM _ software update client config, and look at it, then you will see down here, enable third-party updates is set to true. So you know from that check that things are where they need to be. You can also actually look in a log. I don't know if I'll find it. Let me try. So on the client, the logging is really the same as for any software update. Let me go in here and see if I'll find it. So if I look in updates deployment log, I think the one that I'll need is this historical one. You can find an entry, I think, hopefully it hasn't rolled out, is third party. Do that again. Maybe I will find it in the other one. Let me check. If not, no big deal. Just trying to show you in case it is there. Okay, so maybe not. But in here, occasionally we will find an entry saying essentially checking for whether third-party updates is enabled. And I could have sworn that it was in here, but nevertheless, let me just open this one again just to make sure, because I could have sworn it was there. Okay, well, nevertheless. And you will occasionally find it and be able to validate it there. You really don't need the updates deployment log with those other two in place. Should be good to go. And so now that we've done this, the lab is fully configured. Let me pull both systems out of the way. Lab is fully configured for using third-party update integration. Now, we need to actually go set this up and see how it works. To get a start on that, because there are a lot of moving parts here, I want to show you kind of a flowchart of how this stuff works, right? And every time I go through this, seems like I find something that I need to tweak the wording on, but hopefully it communicates, right? So step number one is that the third-party update management has to be enabled. We did that. The administrator chooses whether to allow ConfigMgr to automatically manage the signing cert or to use a third party. So we did all that. Once we do that, step two is the third-party signing cert is either manually or automatically created and installed on the WSUS SUP server. Right in the right locations that I showed you. So I don't know why I have the word either. So I found something I need to remove, but either way, right? And then step three is the administrator is going to go subscribe to the desired third-party update catalog. So this is where we are. We have not done step three. We did step 1 and 2, and then we are here, right? So we'll pick up right here. So let's continue on through the flow. Once we subscribe to the desired third-party update catalog, there is this section, step 4, 5, and 6, that happens to do the subscription. So the subscribed third-party update catalogs are downloaded. That is from the third-party update vendor, right? Their location. 5, there will be at least one cert with the catalog that comes down that you will have to approve as part of the wizard. So administrators will approve that. And then finally, the full catalog begins to synchronize from the third-party vendor. So step 6, we are grabbing the catalog and we are loading it to WSUS. Notice the one-way arrow. ConfigMgr at this point will know nothing about those updates. We're simply downloading them from the vendor, loading them into the WSUS database, the software update point database, right? So that can take a while. The one catalog that's in there now from HP has greater than 4,000 updates, so it will take a while to load in. So the point is you need to wait for that synchronization to complete, because if you move forward without that synchronization completing, you won't get things built out the way you think you should, right? So once that sync is complete, now we have to go into ConfigMgr and initiate a traditional software update sync, right? That's step 7. So now the updates are all over here. We need to make ConfigMgr aware that these updates are over there. This step 7 synchronization is not pulling over the software update definitions. This step 7 is simply synchronizing between the two to say, hey, there's additional products now that are in the WSUS database that you could, if you want to, choose, right? So once we get done with this, then the software update selection of products will include those third-party updates. And then step 8 will be go in and choose whichever products you want. And once you choose the products, yeah, we have to sync again, step number 9. So step number 9, we know what products we want. Now we've got to go get them. So the metadata from WSUS gets placed into ConfigMgr. We need to wait for that synchronization to finish. Once we're done with that synchronization, step 10, we're going to locate any third-party updates that we've synchronized that are of interest, In the all updates view, there's a category filter by vendor. I'll show you that. And then we need to choose to publish which updates we want. This is a step unique to third-party update management, right? With Microsoft updates, the concepts are the same. It's just you don't have to deploy the content because it's available on the Microsoft servers and we know where to go get it. Here, it's available on the vendor servers and we have to go grab the content from the updates that you care about and place that content on the WSUS server. That's step 11. Publishing the update will cause content to be downloaded from the vendor site and stored one way right now on WSUS. ConfigMgr doesn't know anything about the content right now, right? And so after you do this, yeah, you need to initiate another software update sync so that ConfigMgr knows about it. So this step 11, there's a column, and we've talked about this already. There's a column in ConfigMgr called metadata, right, that you can choose, and you'll see me use in just a minute. Metadata means, or metadata only, I think it's called, at this step, prior to step 11, will be set to yes. Metadata only means we can scan for that update content, or the systems that require that update, but we cannot deploy the update. We don't have the content. Publishing the update causes the content to be retrieved, right? And we'll change that metadata only from yes to no. And so we learn about that when we do the traditional sync. From there, step 13 is deploying the third-party updates just like you would anything else. In step 14, whenever you're choosing the download location, in the Microsoft update scenario, typically that's an internet download location, choose that here as well, and then when we see the third-party update, we will know to go get that content from WSUS. A lot of busyness in this flow. Let's actually go see this work. So we're going to go back and demo this again. So the first demo is we're going to subscribe to the third-party update catalog, which I've actually already done just to speed this along because otherwise the synchronization would take a while. As a part of that subscription, the third-party update catalog will synchronize. Once we have that, we need to publish the third-party updates, and then we'll deploy the third-party updates as normal. So I probably won't even do the deploy because the third-party update catalog that I have available is for HP systems. I'm running on virtual machines, and so I would never get one of these third-party updates to apply to a virtual machine that is not HP because the virtual machine is obviously a VM. So it doesn't make any sense to deploy that third-party update. I'll deploy a third-party update in a minute, but not one from HP. All right, so let me pull back in the lab. And what we need to do is go subscribe first to a third-party update catalog. Now, again, I've got this configured in my lab already. If I didn't, the timings of this would just be long breaks in between. So just for expedience, I have this configured, but we will proceed as if I don't. So to subscribe to the third-party update, I'll go to Software Library, Software Updates, and then Third-Party Software Update Catalogs. Now, you see two catalogs in here. Pretend that you don't see the Adobe systems right now. We'll just focus on the HP, which is the one that is there by default. So I'm already subscribed, which is why you see unsubscribe. I can click subscribe to the catalog again. And I will, just to go through the wizard a little bit and show you that experience. But you click on subscribe, and it will show you the download URL, and it will show you the download option, which it will quickly go and find the catalog at that FTP site. And then I have to review and approve the cert. So every catalog that you have will be signed by a certificate. So we'll talk more about the catalog formats in a minute, and you'll understand at least one of the differences between the legacy and the updated format. But for now, I have to view that certificate, and then once I view it, I can agree to import it into the lab and move forward, right? So I'm going to hit next, and if I click forward, I believe this will, the reason I say I believe is because I recently just synchronized this catalog. So, but I believe that's going to trigger another sync. But we'll pretend this is the first time, right? So whenever I did this this subscription, Now, immediately, that catalog is going to begin to synchronize down from the vendor's website, in this case, HP. So we need to monitor for that to happen. We need to wait for that to finish up. And if we look in the ISV update sync agent log, that's where we'll see all of the activity. All right, so just a couple of little connection errors that I was having as I was shifting over to SSL, but you can kind of see that it's working. WSUS is busy synchronizing updates. So one thing that we'll also look at, there's a process before this. This log will reflect actually acquiring the updates and loading them into WSUS. There's a log that will actually record downloading of the catalog from the vendor's website. So we should have probably started with that one first, but let me go in here to users, here, app data, local, and then temp. It's called Patch Downloader. Used for downloading patches of all sorts, and in this case, the third-party update catalog. All right, so let's look at that. So pull that open, and you can see that just recently it was busy downloading the content and verifying the signature, and then once it downloads that cab file, it's going to move it into a folder called ISV temp, right? So it's put it here in the temporary folder, but the actual work location is going to be ISV temp, as we'll see in a minute. So that records the actual download of the catalog, and then we would wait typically for this to kick in and begin loading updates. So again, I've already done it here, so I'm not going to wait for it here. Let me show you by rolling up in the log. So this is what it would look like. You would see update synchronization. It would take a while. These are the HP updates that I synced to the update catalog. Eventually we would finish, and you see this red and think there's a problem. There's really not. All it's saying is how many updates were successfully synchronized. 0 failed. The failed is what triggers the red color. So don't be alarmed by that. But this is what you'd expect to see, and that will I don't know if it will happen here or not because I just synchronized this recently, but either way, that is something you would need to wait on. Before you move forward, you need to make sure that those the updates in that catalog are pushed over to WSUS and so forth, right? So once you have those updates in WSUS, then the next thing is ConfigMgr needs to learn about the fact that those updates are out there. Right, so that would happen by going through and manually triggering a synchronization. Right. One thing before I get there, I don't want to forget to mention this. So I was talking about how we're downloading the updates and we're injecting them into WSUS and so forth, and that's true. There's the ISV temp folder, which I mentioned, is where all of that busyness is taking place. So you'll see it here. Right, and so this one is empty because it's really not doing anything, and not surprising because I just recently synced it, right? But you would see movement in here as different files were being processed out of the cab and so forth. Here's the point. This is a self-maintaining folder. You should really never have to touch this. It is cleaned up on a schedule. You might come in here and see some stuff that's just hanging around in here. Sometimes people get antsy about leaving content in folders and consuming disk space or whatever. So the point is, if you feel like you have to, you can manually clean this. Just be very careful. Make sure the executive is stopped first. Then you can go clean it. Certainly leave the ISV temp folder there, and you're good to go, right? But just showing you that. Okay, so now that we have the stuff synchronized over to WSUS, now we need to let ConfigMgr learn about it. Again, right now, the updates would just be in the WSUS server database, software update point. The ConfigMgr database would have no knowledge of the fact those updates are there. So what we need to do now is go manually synchronize ConfigMgr. So we would synchronize software updates here. We would say yes, and again, this is already done, so I won't have to wait for it. But at this stage, we would then go into the ConfigMgr log as normal. Here it is, shortcut it. And we would wait for this synchronization to finish. So what we're expecting at this stage, here it is, we're starting the sync. So that won't take long because I already have this done in just a few minutes. So I'll minimize this because we'll come back to it. So what I would be looking for to happen here is that we would, on the config manager side, because of the sync, we would learn about the new product categories that are out there because of the fact these updates were published. This sync is not going to actually pull those updates over because we don't know that we need to yet. This sync is only going to make the product categories visible. Here's what I mean. So after that sync is finished, we have to wait for it. Then we would go back to administration, go under site configuration, go to sites here, and then go to software update point. And we would see on the products tab, now again, mine's already done, so I have all this filled out, but we would see this HP category of products. Again, ignore the Adobe right now. The HP category products. So I would just put check marks in here telling Config Manager which ones I want to actually synchronize into the environment. And as soon as I'm done with that, I would go back over here and I would trigger another sync, right? And this would cause, at this point, the updates themselves to move over from WSUS into the Config Manager database. So I'm not going to trigger it right here because there's really no need, but just wanted to kind of go through that. And you know, there are a couple of things that need to happen in tandem to get all those updates that you care about into the Config Manager database. Okay, so now that we actually have completed the syncs to learn about the new products, to actually pull the products that we care about, the updates that we care about into the Config Manager database, now we can go explore, right? We're on the All Software Updates view. And so what I want to do is hone in just on the HP specific updates. So I'm going to come down here to Vendor and Add. And I'm going to select HP Business Clients and search. And so the updates that are here will be from that HP catalog, right? So we see them here. Now, before I go forward, because what I'm going to do now is talk about publishing. Before I go forward, you saw the process that I went through to subscribe to the update. You saw, I was on it, I read it, I didn't call it out, but there were 4,200 plus updates that were in that catalog. And so that synchronization for the first time would take a while because we have to load all those updates, right? So here's the point. If you have several catalogs that you want to load, just be careful. The more that you load, the longer it's going to take, right? Same thing here. I'm about to walk you through publishing an update. If you have a large list of updates that you need to publish simultaneously, it can take a while, right? So what is publication? Right now, we have metadata here. This is the data that allows Config Manager to scan your environment and determine if a given update is required. An update in metadata only status cannot be deployed. In fact, you see this column, right? This column I added, it's a new column, metadata only, of yes, this one is set to no, right? Also, notice the icon color. Pay attention to the icon color, it will tell you things. The icon color of blue, this is not a deployable update. It needs to be green in order for it to be deployable. Why is this not deployable? Because I don't have any content. I need the content in the case of third-party updates published to WSUS in order for me to be able to deploy this update. So if I were to go right-click on this now and select deploy, I would get the wizard pop up here, and I could go browse and choose a collection, whatever, and then click next and immediately get an error because we see the update either is expired or set to metadata only, and you cannot deploy an update that way, right? So this one I've already fixed, but let me just show you. On this one, I'll just pick the next one in the list. If I want to deploy this update, I can right-click and select Publish that update, right? So I'm gonna publish it, and I just get a note here saying, you know, hey, great, you're gonna publish this. Make sure you monitor the progress in the ISV update sync agent log, and then once that is validated as being published, then you can expect to see the icon change from blue to green. So let's go do that, but I'm going to stop in another place along the way. So I tend to live and die by the logs. I don't tend to go to status messages, though status messages can be useful. In this case, they are. So if I go under system status and I look at component status and I look at ISV component, this one shows good, right? Which is great. Show messages all 1 day ago. Hopefully this is updated, might not be. Yeah, successfully published content for update, right? This may not be the exact update ID yet. I don't know, when did this come in? So this is older, right? Not a current one, but that's okay. It still shows you that you can see the detail here about publishing updates and so forth, right? We'll come back to this in a minute. But in the ISV log specifically, this one is the wsync manager that completed the sync. Let's go into the ISV log here. All right, so we should be downloading the content. Yeah, we're in the middle of it. So we're downloading the file. We see that we need to deploy this one. We're downloading it. And once we get finished downloading, we're going to attempt to publish it, right? So let me pause this so we're not just staring at a long download here. And as soon as it's finished, I'll resume. Okay, so just checking back in, the download has completed. Now we are successfully validating the signature against that content. Remember, all of this content has to be digitally signed. So we need to validate that the content is acceptable by ConfigMgr standards. And then once it is, we're going to begin the process of publishing it in WSUS, right? So what do I mean by the content is acceptable by ConfigMgr standards? So again, we're validating the digital signature. And so there is a certificate that is provided by the vendor that we will load into our environment. And if we have that certificate, that's what we're validating against at that stage before publishing it to WSUS. When we publish it to WSUS, that's where the WSUS signing cert comes in. But let me show you what I mean. So over under administration again, if we go under security and go under certificates, you will see that I have a number of certs from HP, right? All of these are valid and in what are called an unblocked state. And so because of the fact I have these certs, now not all these certs are required per update, but one of them is, then I can validate against this cert, then ConfigMgr trusts the update. And so I can go ahead and begin the publication process over into WSUS. Now this takes a bit, and at this stage we have actually downloaded into ISV temp. So let me go back there and show you that while we're waiting. So under ConfigMgr ISV temp, here is the update that is kind of in progress. It's not the smallest update in the world, so it'll take a few minutes for sure to publish out. But that's where it is, and that's what we're working on right now. And as soon as we are done with publishing, then we can take the next step. So I'll go back on pause here for a minute and come right back after the update publication is finished. Okay, so we're done, right? So you see successfully added content. You look at this. It took about 3 minutes, roughly 4 minutes to do that, right? So we did have success. We see it in the ISV update log. So now that the content is there, let's go back to the console and see what the status of that update looks like. So if we go back to all software updates and we do back by vendor and look at HP here and do a search, we're going to find that update, and we're going to see that update is still not green. I forget which one it was now that we do that, but let me just sort on metadata only, and you'll see there is only one metadata only still of no, right? All the other ones are yes. And so again, I forget which one it was that I just published. That's okay though. But the question is, why is it that now that I've published content, I'm still set metadata only yes, and I can't deploy the update? The answer is because in order for ConfigMgr to learn about the fact that we do have content published, guess what? Yes, we need to do another sync. So in this case, the sync will need to run to completion, and that will be the way ConfigMgr knows that that update is set for being able to have content. So I'm going to let this run, and again, it shouldn't take very long at all, since we probably only have that one thing to process. We'll see. But I'll pause this again, and whenever the sync is done, we'll come back. Okay, and so we're done. So we see that we did our synchronization. We have one update to synchronize, so that audio driver, Connexit audio driver is the one we wanted. And so it has synchronized in and good to go. So now, if I refresh this or search again, and let's see, go down, whatever, let's sort by metadata only, great. And then scroll up, I can find it now. Connexit high definition, and this one. So we have two of them, right? So this one is good to go. The content is published. It's ready to go. So at this stage, now that we have these updates set and ready to go, we just deploy them totally like normal, right? Everything from here is the same. Now, I'm not going to go through a deployment of this. Again, this is an HP-focused update. I have virtual machines, so no way would these apply anyway. I will deploy one in a minute, but that kind of gives you a sense of how to work with these and kind of the back and forth sync processes and so forth that are required to get everything lined out. So we'll get back to the lab in a minute. Okay. So before we get to that advanced piece, let me just talk to you about the catalog for just a minute. So I've already shown you, and we've mentioned catalogs a couple of times. Let me just say it at this high level. Again, my labels, have never seen these in the official product documentation. Two versions of the catalog might exist: the updated version, the legacy version. So the real difference between the two is in the legacy catalog, we will have the catalog, which will contain all of the update definitions and so forth, and that catalog will be signed by a certificate. So you will need to approve that certificate as a part of the import. But all of the updates are also signed by certificates. Those certificates are not included in the catalog. So they would have to be imported separately, right? And typically in a System Center Updates publisher environment, that would mean you're prompted for every single cert, right? Contrast that to the updated format where the catalog still is signed by a cert. All the updates are in the catalog, but the certificates required by those updates are also included in the catalog. That's why whenever I imported or subscribed to the HP catalog, and then I went to the certificates view, you didn't see one cert there, you saw about 8, right? Because as a part of subscribing to that HP catalog, we go ahead and pull in all of the certs that are also part of that catalog. And because it's an updated catalog, we go ahead and make all of those certs functional and able to be used and so forth. We can also, as you'll see in just a minute, import legacy catalogs. And when we import legacy catalogs, we will know that the software updates within will require external certs. So we will go ahead and import those external certs. But because they're external and not part of the catalog, these will not be functional certs. They will be in as blocked, meaning you can't do anything with those updates until you manually choose to approve or unblock, in this case, these certs. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so a bit of an advanced scenario. So here I want to show you kind of walking through the process of pulling in that Adobe catalog, right? So before I get there, three things. So SCUP or custom updates and catalog. This is a little bit kind of behind the scenes for those who might have used SCUP before. So previously, it was possible with SCUP, and one might have thought here, to import a custom catalog by browsing to the cab file. That's not possible. You have to refer to a website in SSL format, and then you can deploy or pull in the catalog file and deploy. SCUP. So we've talked about several times, there is still a role for SCUP. SCUP and third-party update management can work hand in hand, right? So just a couple of questions to help you understand. Do you need SCUP, right? So do you need finite control of this whole process? If the answer is yes, then SCUP should be a part of your solution, right? Do you have advanced scenarios involving third-party or custom updates? If you do, then SCUP should be a part of your solution. Do you need to manage a scenario not yet supported by ConfigMgr third-party update integration? If yes, SCUP is part of the solution, right? Do you need to use SCUP and third-party update integration and ConfigMgr simultaneously? Absolutely. What is the potential scenario for that? So if you want to leverage ConfigMgr third-party update integration to publish and manage signing certs and also client settings, but leverage SCUP for the finite control of what gets published and avoid the larger full catalog import, that is a perfect scenario for the two of them together, right? If you are in the business of authoring custom updates and catalogs, that is a SCUP thing, right? Again, not going into the details of SCUP. If you want to see that, refer back to part 12 of the series. So two things I want to do in the demo. I want to import my custom catalog. Now, in fairness, you see that Adobe is already there, so I have done that work, but I'll walk you through it as if it's not. And then finally, I want to publish that third-party custom update from the Adobe catalog, and this time I will, in fact, deploy. So let me pull back in the lab, and we will shift over. So let me go back to my third-party software update catalog. So it is totally, so we've talked a bit about the different catalog formats, right? Strongly prefer, and ConfigMgr third-party update integration natively supports the current version, the most current version of the catalog. We can import an older version. So that's what I have here. I've imported the Adobe catalog. So how did I do that? I clicked on Add Custom Catalog. You will need your download URL. Then you can put in publisher name and description. You can put whatever you want in there. It makes sense to put the correct information. But either way, right, good to go. Now, this is not truly a custom catalog that I have built that is unique maybe to line of business applications or whatever. But it is kind of illustrating the concept of bringing in the custom catalog, right? So now, I can import the custom catalog, and that basically gives a pointer to where that custom catalog is. But importing the custom catalog does not subscribe to that custom catalog. So I need to make sure that I subscribe after I import. So let me do that. So right-click, subscribe to the catalog, and as before, I now see the download URL. I can go download that catalog, review and approve the cert. So like before, I can view the cert and hit OK and click forward. Yes, I agree. I've already done this, so I'm just going to exit out at this point, right? So as before, what this causes to happen is that a certificate for this catalog, related to this catalog, is downloaded and placed in the certificates store, and it's one of these two. I can't remember which one. I'll come back to that in just a minute. Now, I've already done this, right, to get ready. Let me just tell you, whenever I imported the Adobe catalog, there was only one certificate that showed up here, right? That certificate that I approved. That is one of the fundamental differences between the legacy catalog and the new catalog, right? Whenever I imported or subscribed the HP catalog, the cert for that catalog that I approved plus all the others came in, right? Why? Because like we showed in the last slide, in the updated catalog format, the catalog contains the updates plus all of the certs required by those updates. That is not true for legacy. That's why whenever you import a legacy catalog or subscribe a legacy catalog, you only get the certificate that is directly on that catalog, right? Now, I have two here because I've deployed an Adobe update, and we'll come back to that in just a minute, but just to call that out, right? Okay, so I have subscribed. Now, like before, I need to go through the process of subscribing waiting for the catalog to sync down in the ISV update agents log. Then I need to sync through ConfigMgr so that the Adobe product shows up. Then I select the Adobe product. Then I do a sync again, and that pulls over the Adobe updates that are in that catalog and in those product categories. And then in ConfigMgr, I can go and work with them. So I've done all that. Right? So let's go back to all software updates, and we will see the vendor category now. You already saw it, but Adobe will be here. And if I search on it, I have several updates that are actually here and that I've published. So I'm going to go do another one, right? This one is the one that I've actually deployed to the environment. We'll see in just a minute. I'm just going to go randomly find another one. So this is the 10.1.13 update. So it is currently metadata only of yes. I want to go publish this update, right? So like before, it tells me to refer back to the ISV sync agent log. So let's go do that and see what happens with this. So it's not, doesn't look like it's doing anything yet, but it will kick in here in just a minute. So give it a few minutes here, and whenever this process finishes, I will, well, it looks like it's starting. So it looks like the download's pretty quick. Okay, good, smaller update. And this is what I wanted, right? Notice the error, right? I've got the download, I've got the update downloaded, but it's failing my signature check. Why? Well, if I go back and look at the console, I could, well, before I even do that, let me go back to monitoring. If I go to component status now and search for ISV, it's in a warning status. This is where status messages are also good in addition to the ISV log, right? 1 day ago. And so I can look and we see, hey, failed to publish, right on the time frame that we thought. And then if I look, it shows me the detail. It shows me the name. It shows me the thumbprint ID of the certificate that it needs, and so forth. So the reason is something is wrong with the cert. So if I go back to administration and I look, notice now I have 3 certificates from Adobe. The original 2 that I had, the one that came along with the catalog, another one that came along with the update that I wanted to publish when I did that a second ago, getting ready for this, and now the third one that came from the publication I just tried to do. This is the new one. How do I know? Because it is blocked. These certificates will get downloaded whenever you publish an update from that legacy formatted catalog, but they will not be automatically approved. You will have to come in here and approve it, right? Or unblock it, if you will. So I've unblocked this. Now, let me go back to my updates, and hopefully I remember which one it was. I think it was .1.13. And try this whole thing again. So let me add the criteria, go back to vendor, add and search. And so .1.13, I think, was down here. I think it's that one I did. So let me try it. Publish third-party update again. Going to look in the sync log and watch for it. So downloading again, and now it passes. So we're calling WSUS to add the content, and we're good to go. And as soon as that's published, which will take probably not that long, but it will take a minute or two to publish. So I'm successful, all good. Now, if I refresh this, this update still will not show that it is ready for publication. Why? Because I need another sync, another software update sync, to go and retrieve the new update status from WSUS. So I'm going to go back into ConfigMgr log, and shouldn't take long. We'll just wait for it, and I'll pause the video. So just making sure, yeah, starting synchronization. So we'll wait for it, and it looks like it's in the middle of it. We'll wait for it and come back in the video whenever we're done. Okay, and so we're done, and we see that it synchronized the reader update. And so now, if I go in and search again, that one is right here, and it's ready to go, right? Now, so I don't need any of these. I just have been publishing them just to do it, right? This one is the one that I've deployed. So I actually have a software update group here where I've deployed this update, right here in the Adobe software update group. So I have a deployment out. And so everything from here, now that I have all the updates that I want published and so forth, everything about the deployment just proceeds as normal, right? The only question mark that you might have, again, that we talked about is whenever in the deployment wizard we're asked for a download location, just choose internet. And whenever we see a third-party update whose content is stored in WSUS, we'll just go retrieve it from there. No problem, right? So I have this deployment set up and targeted to my Windows 10 machines. Let me pull in the Windows 10 machine. Had to reset it back to the state that I wanted. Forgot that I didn't turn it back on. Either way, should be up here in just a second. All right, coming up. Let me get logged into it. All right, logging in. Good enough, and it'll take just a minute to process as the desktop comes up. Let me load Software Center, and then I will resume the video. All right, so loaded in, Software Center up. Here's my updates. You see that I have Reader available. So from here, it's just simply installing like normal, preparing to download, no problem. Should shift over, yeah, waiting to install. So everything at this stage is normal. If you run into any issues here, it's the normal client logs that you would use for troubleshooting. Typically, if you run into any issues here, it would be related to certificates not being correct or the group policy not being correct. So this kind of illustrates end to end, right? So just let it install. Good to go, and let me pull out the labs, and so that's deploying and moving forward, right, and so on. So that really gets us through the demo. Again, a couple of weaves here and there, but hopefully it communicated. Back to the troubleshooting tips and tricks here. So a lot of this you've already seen, right? Status messages, looking at the ISV component for knowing whether the update's published correctly. Logs on the server side, patch downloader for acquiring the third-party catalog, the ISV update sync agent for publishing the updates to WSUS and so forth. The WSync manager for managing the WSUS signing certificate and so on. On the client, we have just standard logs. We also have the WMI component, right? The ISV temp folder on the site server so that we can see things moving and in progress. The certs, right? So we've talked about the certs that are needed on the server, the WSUS cert store and such, and also on the client. So those are important. Looking in the registry, if you are on a server or in a scenario where you need to enable SSL, on your WSUS server, then looking at the using SSL registry entry, the port number registry entry can validate that your WSUS server is in SSL mode, right? And then WMI entries we talked about for the client, GPO, and so on. A few tips, right? And then we'll be done. So third-party custom update catalogs. So there are those two formats. There's the legacy format, and just a couple of points, I've said it a few times, the legacy catalogs are not blocked. Experiences will vary. Strongly urge you to use the updated format where you can, and if you have a particular catalog format where you want to use that, encourage the vendor to adopt the updated catalog format. The legacy catalogs will import, but the updates in the catalog may fail to publish because of the signing cert for that update in that catalog being imported as blocked. You'll need to unblock it, right? The current catalog version, all of that is seamless. Practical third-party updates in the enterprise. So just a few comments here. You know, enterprises use ConfigMgr heavily to manage Microsoft updates and make sure their systems are in place with the latest updates. Updating third-party or custom software is in many cases just kind of not even thought about, which is an odd thing to me. Leveraging the structure that we've already built to help provide coverage for those third-party scenarios, really, really important and pretty easy to slip in right here, right, with this third-party update management. In terms of third-party update management, the ConfigMgr ISV sync service. So this is important, right? The ConfigMgr ISV sync service is responsible for publishing content for an update, but it is not able to publish content for any update that it itself did not synchronize, right? General rule of thumb, an admin should use the same tool to publish update metadata and content both, right? So if you're using SCUP, use it in both cases for metadata only and metadata plus content. If you're using the integration in ConfigMgr, use it for both, right? Icons, so we saw that the icon color actually tells us something, so pay attention to that. Metadata, again, third-party updates can be published metadata only. No problem, that's the metadata only column set to yes, and that allows you to scan. Or you can say metadata only no, which includes the content. Be careful if you're queuing up a whole lot of updates to publish their content, because as you saw, just with one, it could take a bit depending on the size. And then finally, System Center Updates Publisher, depending on the scenario, definitely still needed. If you need to author custom updates, definitely there. Use it, it works well in combination. And that's about it. So we will wrap it up here. And hopefully this gives you a better sense of the third-party update integration in ConfigMgr. We will see you